His first big break was in 1992 on the sketch comedy series The Ben Stiller Show, which met its swift end, being canceled after a mere 13 episodes. He would continue making appearances in shows and movies until 1995, when he secured a spot on News Radio, an NBC sitcom.
Andy Dick, an improv comedian and a stand-up comedian who had a lot of television success.
And also one of Joe Rogan's first breaks in television. He appeared in other sitcoms as well around that time, such as Less Than Perfect, Get Smart, and The Nanny. And he would also land plenty of film
His characterizations are funny to me, though. Now, for me, that was one of the things, that was my angle and approach to stand-up comedy as well, because improv comedy is, look at it as a scene, right? Because it's more than just you, the individual. Stand-up comedy is just the solo individual standing on stage with a microphone and sharing his thoughts with the audience that makes them laugh. Improv comedy, even though an individual can do it, the art form is between two actors. And so the funny that is created between the two. Now, for those who don't know what improv is, it is nothing that is pre-written. Everything is created on the spot. And that's what I like to call lightning in a bottle. So anyway, so this is where Andy Dick comes from. The likes of some of my influences is like Robin Williams, John Belushi as well, and even Richard Pryor. Press play.
Cameos and voiceover work into the early 2000s, making himself a familiar face for comedy fans at the time. As goofy as he was on the small screen, doing slapstick in sitcoms and lowbrow antics in sketch comedy shows, he was developing a greater penchant for substance abuse as his presence in the spotlight grew.
There's drunk Andy, and when drunk Andy's around, you just gotta get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, this is one of the pitfalls of being a comedian, or shall I say a performance artist, because we've also heard about this with a lot of bands and musical artists. But specifically dealing with stand-up comedy, this is that tightrope, right? Because on one hand, we're supposed to embrace the chaos and then even explore different altered states while creating and harnessing our gift of comedy, right? The different kung fu styles. But then if you're like an Andy Dick, if you're like John Belushi, if you're like a Richard Pryor, there's a time to where it becomes self-destructive.
You know, you can tell the difference.
It's two different guys.
He's very aggressive.
Yeah.
He gets like bangs in the car window, and you're like, oh no, it's drunk Andy.
Yeah.
Alcoholism seemed to be his main vice, and though surely there were people who tried to put him on the right path, he only fell deeper into the clutches of addiction. Fellow comedian and Second City member,
I believe the reason why the Andy Dick was able to go for as long as he did is because, did you see his look? He looked so innocent and non-threatening. Caucasian guy. You just say, oh, we'll give him a chance. I think that's what it was.
Chris Farley was his AA sponsor, or was supposed to be anyways. At some point, Chris himself relapsed into his old habits of alcohol and illicit drug abuse to the point where it was clear for all to see in 1997, when in December, he was found dead in his apartment at just 33 years old.
Now, this was his AA sponsor, right? So we know he had to take that on.
From an overdose on cocaine and morphine. We don't know for sure what impact Farley's death had on Andy, but I think it's safe to say it wasn't a positive one. A Christmas party hosted by Phil Hartman, a co-star on News Radio. Andy supplied the cocaine that caused Hartman's wife, Bryn, to relapse into her addiction after 10 years of sobriety. This relapse would culminate in tragedy. 5 months later, while high on cocaine, she murdered Phil before taking her own life.
At 6:20 this morning, residents of this upscale Encino neighborhood called police to report gunshots coming from the Hartman's gated estate. Officers arrived to find a 9-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl by the front door. As they were taking the children out of the house, officers heard a gunshot in the master bedroom. There they discovered comedian Phil Hartman dead. Authorities say it appears his wife Bryn shot him, then turned the gun on herself.
John Lovitz replaced Phil Hartman on news radio, but the show wouldn't last long following his loss. NBC ended the sitcom after the...
This show was funny though, but Phil Hartman is the one who really made it work. The cast was good. Joe Rogan with hair. The cast was good. The writing was good. Each character was very well defined, and yeah, man, that was a funny show that was surrounded with tragedy. So let's expedite this to where we can get some things as far as what led to his downfall.
Exposure. At the time, this probably seemed like a relatively harmless stunt in the grand scheme of things. As juvenile and ridiculous an act as a 38-year-old exposing his ass to a group of McDonald's customers is, it was a sign of the...
See, man, that's that tightrope of what being a comedian is. You know, his stage wasn't just inside of a comedy club. It was the world. His first time getting arrested was mooning a bunch of people, showing patrons his ass cheeks at a McDonald's.
Much more sinister pattern of behavior to come. Next year, in 2005, while performing at Yuck Yuck's Comedy Club, he pulled down his pants and exposed his dick to the audience. Though this incident didn't result in an arrest or any lawsuits, he was promptly removed from the stage. He was scheduled to perform a...
Now, what's funny about that is that Richard Pryor did the same thing before his breakdown. Like the story goes is that Richard Pryor was performing and he was still trying to find himself. This was before the Richard Pryor that we all know. And so anyway, he ends up pulling his dick out and putting it in somebody's drink and then just walking off stage. And then he went on a bit of a sabbatical and came back and returned as the Richard Pryor we all know. Let's see.
Fellow cast members doing nothing to stop it would be very uncomfortable and awkward, not to mention the fact that it could potentially make the situation worse. Assaulted her. Why would oral sex on top, but she had stopped.
I jumped way too much.
Laugh it off. Oh baby, I'm dead. And
I'm
show
trying
the
to make you
options.
go faster and I'm skipping shit. Okay,
televised environments. I'd have thought much of. He only pressed the accelerator on these creepy and inexplicable sexual acts. Considering that strange behavior from celebrities is basically the norm, the industry must not have thought much of these two incidents, because Andy Dick was invited that same year to the Comedy Central roast of Pamela Anderson. Surely he wouldn't pose a threat in a televised environment, right? Well, the irresponsibility of the show's organizers led to a groping incident.
But it's that edge that he was getting, but that's why I say it's the edge, and then it's the tightrope, right? You've got to skillfully walk, pushing the boundaries without breaking a law or becoming offensive. But the spirit of comedy is that boldness, the audacity to do things that the average person doesn't do. So looking back, this will always be funny. It's the fact that he had the audacity to do it.
Incidents live on air. During the roast, Andy pretended that he was Pamela Anderson's plastic surgeon, joking that her breasts were fake. As a part of this gag, he repeatedly groped them over the course of an entire minute.
Don't worry, she can't feel any of this. She can't feel...
People magazine wrote the following about Andy's actions. In resurfaced footage of the incident, Dick groped her breasts as he purported to show the audience how, well...
Now, the only reason why that it worked at the time was because everybody also knew that he was gay. So I guess that means he was bisexual or something. So, gay guys have always gotten a pass that heterosexual dudes haven't got. You know what I mean?
Well engineered they were. This is all standard procedure, he said. Anderson appeared shocked by Dick's behavior, but also seemed to try and laugh it off. Oh baby, I'm so sorry, fellow roast attendee Courtney Love could be heard saying during the clip while reaching out to hold Anderson's hand. Dick later told the audience, don't worry, she can't feel any of this. Correcting him, Anderson replied, I can't oral sex on Tommy Lee, who at the time was Pamela Anderson's husband.
This was his husband. This was her husband at the time, and he was there once again. if he felt like Andy Dick was a heterosexual man grabbing his wife's boobs, he probably punched him in the face or something.
Performing oral sex on Tommy Lee, who at the time was Pamela Anderson's husband.
I'm a doctor. Out of my way.
Assuming this wasn't planned in advance, considering Pamela's evident discomfort, why did nobody stop Andy as he assaulted her? Why wasn't he immediately kicked off the roast after that? It's a dark thought, but
It's that realm where comedians and clowns would get that creative grace. And sometimes you fail miserably, but man, when it wins, well shit, a lot of the times you might fail miserably, but when it wins, it is history making.
But seemingly the only answer is that the producers cared more about the show going off without a hitch. Acknowledging the sexual misconduct that had just happened on live TV, with fellow cast members doing nothing to stop it, would be very uncomfortable and awkward. Not to mention the fact that it could potentially make the situation worse. Pretending the whole thing was a part of the roast and moving on, however, could salvage it. Act like nothing happened, and simply avoid another incident by not inviting Andy back. Problem solved. However,
Alright, let's skip ahead.
person he was. Unfortunately, things only got worse from here. On January 23rd, 2010, Dick was arrested at about 4 a.m. at a bar in Huntington, West Virginia, on charges of sexual abuse after reportedly groping a bartender and a patron. He was released from jail after pleading not guilty and posting $60,000 bail. According to E! News, officers responded to a call at Rum Runners nightclub, where two victims, a bartender and clubgoer, as well as several witnesses, alleged that Dick engaged in unwanted and uninvited groping of two victims' genital areas, according to a statement from the Huntington PD. Further details about the allegations were provided by a local news station. According to the criminal complaint, a security guard at the club claims he was trying to put an armband on Dick when he became the victim of sexual abuse. The guard says Dick grabbed his crotch and began laughing. Another man says that Dick sexually abused him. The man says he was talking to Dick when, unexpectedly and without invitation, Dick grabbed his crotch and began kissing him.
See, he was just out of control at this point.
This was witnessed by the victim's girlfriend. As he was hollering, talking, he kissed my neck, the second accuser said, as I...
It's just fucking crazy.
Girlfriend. As he was hollering, talking, he kissed my neck, the second accuser said. As I turned around, it was shocking. I was trying to walk away. I felt a hand go in my pants. Apparently, the charges were dismissed after he completed a pretrial diversion program.
He was just out of control.
Involving no legal trouble or drug use for a period of 6 months. This treatment is usually reserved for people who are unlikely to reoffend, lightening the burden of court cases on the system by discarding relatively insignificant ones. However, Andy had several previous arrests for similar charges, so I'm left wondering how come that the authorities on his case were asleep at the wheel. Enough to, yet again, allow him to get away with a... He did not deny that he propositioned others. Of course I'm going to proposition people. I'm single, depressed, lonely, and trying to get a date. In an interview with the producer, we received the following bit of information. Dick has a history of arrests and a roller coaster record when it comes to acting inappropriately in personal and...
Well, what I'm looking for is this one story that this shit is like a classic comedy legend thing where Andy Dick was performing in a comedy club. I think it was down in Texas. And he decides to pull his dick out on stage and rub it on a man's face. Now that's funny any place, just the audacity. But then to do that in a place like Texas, where that cowboy might want to take your mountain oysters off your body. Right? So bear with me.
in professional situations. So why hire him in the first place? We were under the assumption that he was sober. He was a good fit for the character. Oliver
Let's see the video.
purportedly groped an Uber driver's genitals. He would plead not guilty in 2019 for the trial to proceed way down.
He's really got a thing about grabbing genitals, doesn't he? Damn, so you would think he would have went ahead and made a joke about that.